A light rain fell on the back patio of the Ferraz Emprendimientos building. Rosalí held a crumpled envelope in her hands, the letters blurred by the water that also ran down her face, mixing with her tears. "You are fired." No right to explanations. The director had said minutes earlier, her eyes cold as if Rosalí were just another number on the payroll. It was then that the glass door opened with force. "No one fires this woman while I am alive," said Théo Ferraz, crossing the patio without caring about the rain that was already wetting his suit. "And if anyone here has the courage to repeat what they did to her father, repeat it now in front of me." The silence that followed was worth more than any speech, because at that moment, a waitress and a billionaire heir discovered that hope, even trampled, even hidden for years, had never really died. But to understand how we get to this moment, we need to go back to the beginning. Go back to a small kitchen, a dream kept inside a worn notebook, and a woman who served tables without imagining that her heart would be the key to a story bigger than herself. Before we continue, an invitation: if stories like this touch someone in you, if you believe that dignity is worth more than any inheritance, leave your like, write in the comments where you are watching from, and subscribe here to Canal Cree. Every word you leave is what makes these stories continue to be told. Now, let's go to the beginning. Rosalí always woke up before the sun. She lived in a simple little house on the outskirts of a nameless city that could be any city in the interior of Brazil, with her mother, Mrs. Zulmira, who no longer saw so well, but still insisted on sewing by hand to help with the bills. Rosalí's father, Mr. Diodato, had died 8 years ago. Before that, he had worked his whole life as a trusted foreman on the old Ferraz family farm. When the company was still small and the old patriarch, Anselmo Ferraz, barely dreamed of becoming what he would later become, owner of an agribusiness and construction empire that today occupied a 20-story building in the capital. Mr. Diodato had been fired in a way that never made sense, accused of a theft that he swore until his last breath he had not committed, expelled from the farm without a process, without the right to respond, with the entire family thrown into misery overnight. Rosalí was only 12 years old when she saw her father return home with empty eyes, carrying a bundle of clothes and a dignity that no one could take from him, even with everything they did. "One day, my daughter," he would say, "already ill." The truth always ends up appearing. I just don't know if I'll be here to see it. Rosalí kept those words as one keeps a treasure, and she also kept a dream. Tobea Lavier, to defend people like her father, people that life pushes into silence, but a dream doesn't pay the bills, and Rosalí needed to work. She got a job as a waitress in the internal restaurant of Ferraz Emprendimientos, the same surname that had destroyed her family, but the only place that paid enough for her to study at night in a popular law preparatory course with borrowed books and a notebook full of type notes in the margins. She never told anyone at work who her father was. She wore the uniform, smiled at the hurried executives, took coffee orders, and served lunch meetings. Always polite, always attentive, always with that way of treating everyone with the same respect, from the janitor to the director. It was like this that Théo Ferraz, grandson of Anselmo, and now at the head of the family business, noticed her for the first time. Not for the uniform, for the way she treated an elderly delivery man who had dropped a box of cutlery, kneeling to help him pick everything up, without hurry, without complaining, saying, "Don't worry, Mr. Nestor. This can happen to anyone." Théo, sitting at a table in the back, observed that in silence, and from then on, whenever he went to lunch at the company restaurant, he tried to sit in the area that Rosalí served. They started small conversations. Théo noticed the notebook that she always carried, kept carefully in her bag. "What do you study?" he asked one day, curious. Rosalí hesitated, but answered with her head held high. I'm still in the second year. I study at night." "And why?" "Because I believe that every injustice deserves an answer, even if it takes years to arrive." Théo smiled, impressed by the firmness of that answer. He didn't know yet how much those words had to do with himself. The conversations became more frequent. Théo started lending books, recommending teachers, and Rosalí, without ever asking for anything, just received with simple gratitude, always insisting on returning everything in perfect condition, always thanking with a handwritten note. She didn't know that she was conquering, without any intention, the heart of the most coveted man in that company. She didn't do it out of calculation. She did it because that's how she was. Polite, kind, true. And it was exactly that truth that began to bother other people inside. Ferraz, Beatriz Ferraz, Théo's aunt, and one of the company's directors, began to notice her nephew's frequent visits to the restaurant, always at the same table, always at the same time. "That's not like you, Théo. A waitress," she said one day, with poorly disguised disdain. "She is more cultured than half the executives on this floor, and she treats people with a dignity that I would like to see more around here." Beatriz did not respond, but the discomfort was registered in her eyes, and there, without anyone knowing yet, a storm was beginning to form. The months passed, and what began as hallway conversations turned into something deeper. Théo started waiting for Rosalí at the end of her shift, away from the company's eyes, to talk in a nearby square, where they talked about books, dreams, family. It was on one of those nights that Rosalí finally told the truth she had hidden for years. "My father worked on a farm a long time ago. He was fired for an accusation that he always denied. We lost everything after that. He died without being able to prove his innocence." "What farm was that?" Théo asked, feeling a strange tightness in his chest. Rosalí hesitated. "But there was no longer any reason to hide. It was your family's farm, Théo. My father was named Diada. He worked for your grandfather." The silence that followed was heavy. Théo vaguely remembered the name, heard in old conversations, always mentioned with suspicion by the family, as if it were proof of betrayal. "I didn't know. I had no idea you were his daughter," said Théo, his voice choked. "I didn't want you to know like this. I didn't want you to think I was close to you because of that. I never sought anything, Théo. I just wanted to study, work, be someone with my own hands." Théo believed her without hesitation, because he knew her well enough to know there was no lie in her eyes. But he promised, right there, that he would investigate her father's case, go through the old company files, search for the truth that had been buried for so many years. The problem is that Beatriz Ferraz discovered the conversation even before Théo could act. She had always known, kept in silence, that the Dedo's dismissal had been set up. It was she herself, still a young farm employee, who had forged evidence against the honest foreman, on orders from Théo's own father, who feared that Diodato would discover irregularities in the farm's accounts and report the family. Afraid that the truth would come to light and destroy her position within the company, Beatriz decided to act first. She went to the Human Resources Department and, using her authority, forged a complaint against Rosalí, accusing her of undue favoritism due to her closeness to Théo, in addition to alleged irregular use of restaurant materials. That's how, on a common morning, Rosalí was called to the boardroom and received, without any chance of defense, the dismissal letter. "You are fired. No right to explanations," said the director, repeating words that had already destroyed Rosalí's family once. Rosalí walked out into the rain that was beginning to fall, feeling that history was repeating itself. That injustice seemed to pursue her family like a shadow that never tired. It was at that exact moment, the same one that opened this narration, that Théo, warned by a colleague about what had happened, ran to the patio and confronted his own family in front of everyone. "No one fires this woman while I am alive, and if anyone here has the courage to repeat what they did to her father, repeat it now in front of me." Beatriz cornered, tried to deny everything, but her pale face and trembling hands told a different story from the one her words tried to sustain. Théo did not let the matter die there. He called an extraordinary meeting with the entire board and demanded that the old farm files be brought to light. It took days, but they found, stored in a forgotten box in the dead archive, the original investigation report on Diodato, a document that had never been used, because it proved exactly the opposite of what had been said at the time. The real person responsible for the diversion of resources was another employee, someone protected by the family, and Diodato had been just the easiest scapegoat to sacrifice. Beatriz, confronted with the evidence, finally confessed in front of Théo and the company's lawyers. The weight of the guilt, carried in silence for so many years, finally came to light. I was young. I was afraid of losing my job. I followed orders that I knew were wrong. I never imagined that this would come back this way. So many years later, Théo did not hide his disappointment, but he also understood that humiliating his aunt would not bring back the lost time. He chose another form of justice. He publicly rehabilitated Diodado's name, created a tribute in his memory within the company, and offered Rosalí compensation in the name of Ferraz Emprendimientos, not as alms, but as reparation for an old debt. Rosalí, however, asked for something different from money. I just wanted to finish my course. That's all. The rest I build with my own hands. And that's exactly what happened. With Théo's support, but never giving up her independence, Rosalí finished law school, graduating with one of the best grades in her class. On the day of the graduation ceremony, when her name was called, she raised her eyes to the sky and whispered softly, "I did it, Dad." The truth appeared, just as you said it would. Théo was in the audience, applauding with a full heart next to Mrs. who finally saw her daughter fulfill the dream that her husband had not lived to witness. Time passed, and what began as a friendship built on respect and truth transformed into something deeper. A union based not on interest, wealth, or appearances, but on loyalty and mutual admiration. Théo and Rosalí built together a simple life amid the abundance that the company offered, always remembering where they came from, always treating those who worked with them with the same respect that Rosalí once showed to an elderly delivery man who had dropped a box of cutlery. Rosalí, sometime later, created within Ferraz Emprendimientos itself, a legal department focused on defending the rights of the company's workers, ensuring that no other story, like her father's, would be repeated in the shadows and in silence. Rosalí's life teaches us something that we often forget in the midst of the rush of our days. True hope is not naive, and it is not always silent. Sometimes it is patient, quiet, disguised as routine, hidden inside a study notebook, inside a work uniform, inside someone who continues to be kind even after having received so much injustice. Rosalí's story is not about luck, nor about a fairy tale ending fallen from the sky. It is about the strength of those who refuse to let the pain of the past define the character of the present. It is about loyalty that cannot be bought, about love that is not born of interest, and about the almost stubborn certainty that the truth, sooner or later, always finds a way to come to light. How many of us carry, like Rosalí, a dream kept under 7 keys, waiting for the right moment to bloom? How many of us have already suffered an injustice and felt that no one would ever believe our version of the story? May this narrative serve as a reminder. Continue watering your hope, even when it seems that no one is looking, because, in the end, it is exactly when we least expect it that life returns. Twofold, everything that was once taken from us. If this story touched your heart, leave below, in the comments, the part that moved you the most. Also, leave your like and subscribe to Canal Cree, because this is what keeps these stories alive and helps us bring, every week, new narratives of love, overcoming and hope. A big hug, and until the next story.